That's okay, that's fine. Just grab my...
Yeah, all good.
Brilliant, thank you.
James is going to start.
Perfect.
Well, noswaith ar pawb. Good evening everyone. Noswaith ar pawb. Great to see you all. I'm just really pleased to be here to say a few words of welcome and a few words of response to this really important report, Lost Boys State of the Nation, from the Centre for Social Justice. I'm the Cabinet Secretary for Social Justice, and of course Sam got hold of me quite some time ago and said, you must come, Jane, to this event, which I know has been planned for some time, and I was very pleased that I could come and say a few words at the beginning to welcome you, and just a couple of reflections from the government, from our Welsh Government. Thank you for coming to Wales, Diolch yn fawr I ddod Gymru, because it's really important that you're travelling nation. I think you've told me that you've been to every party conference, not all, but most of the big ones. But it's important that you're out in the community and that people and those who've got any power or influence that they're listening to and reading your report. Just on a few words from me of welcome to everyone. There's no excuses, our Senedd members, we finished over in our chamber, our temporary chamber, our wonderful new one is just about to reopen, from our business. And so it is a chance for us to come together with so many partners and key people here tonight, I can see. So I was just looking at the report, and it struck me from on the foreword, the Andy Cook's words, where he said, this report, Lost Boys, is not just an exploration of the challenges young men face, but the beginning of a journey to offer a hopeful, positive vision for masculinity in Britain. We need strong fathers, mentors and role models. We need a culture that values the unique contributions of men and supports boys to grow into good, responsible adults. I mean, there's lots of difficult messages in that foreword, but I think, in a sense, from your research and your evidence. But I mean, that's the positive. Hopefully, that will be what will come out of this, out of the discussions on the panel. So just, I mean, from our perspective as a Welsh Government, and I don't think anyone across the chamber, all our parties would disagree with what I'm saying, is that we're committed to creating a more equal Wales and help people reach their full potential, regardless of their background or circumstance. Our initiatives on employability, skills and fair work, very much focused in the report, but our initiatives include a focus on addressing workplace inequalities, providing inclusive opportunities for people to secure employment, develop and enhance their skills and advance in their careers. But that sounds grand, doesn't it? But it has got to reach those who are not succeeding or aren't feeling that this is inclusive, or it's not, the initiatives aren't reaching them. So I think just to say that the findings of the report have profound implications here in Wales. I'm going to just mention a few points coming up from that. Intergenerational impact, how we support boys now will influence the men of tomorrow, how they will parent, lead and relate in Welsh communities. If we allow systemic neglect, we risk perpetuating cycles of disengagement, breakdown, or even worse. Secondly, how do we build resilience and identity in communities across Wales, urban and rural? Many boys and young men may struggle to find positive outlets for identity, contribution or belonging. So providing mentorship, vocational pathways, safe community spaces and healthy masculine role models is crucial. Now, some of these messages are for us in government, Welsh Government, local government, all public bodies, but they're also for citizens, for our education system. Third point, prevention is cheaper and kinder. The longer these trajectories continue unchecked, the greater the cost, emotionally, socially, and economically, and in terms of criminal justice. Early and sustained interventions reaching boys before crisis points are far more effective than reactive measures. So we do recognise we need tailored Welsh policy. Welsh Government, local government I've mentioned, education systems, health and youth services must listen to these insights in this report. We need policies and programmes designed with the lived experience of boys in Wales, culturally, economically, geographically sensitive, rather than imported blanket solutions, and I'm sure we'll get a flavour of that from the panel tonight. But as we reflect on the Lost Boys report, there are key action pointers to carry forward in Wales, and just very briefly, firstly, embed gender-aware approaches in all our children's services, ensure programmes in education, youth work, mental health, justice explicitly consider how boys' pathways may differ and what support they need. I've mentioned mentoring, male role models, positive peer networks. We need to invest in them, particularly in areas of disadvantage, providing accessible mentors in schools, communities, sports, trades, can offset fatherlessness or social isolation. We do need to rethink discipline, exclusion and alternative provision in schools, move from punitive exclusion towards therapeutic, relational and restorative models that keep boys engaged. We need to expand vocational and trades pathways early, celebrating non-academic routes, boosting technical education, apprenticeships and work-based learning suited to diverse talents. We need to strengthen mental health access and design safe spaces for help, developing outreach models that resonate with boys, and train staff to engage with distress expressed through externalizing behaviours. We need to regulate and mediate the digital environment. I'm sure that will come up tonight. Support education on media literacy, healthy sexuality, critical consumption of pornography, safe use of tech, especially in school and youth settings. And we must track boys' outcomes separately by region, by background, by identity, where we can then focus resources and measure impacts. I'm responsible for tackling violence against women, domestic abuse and sexual violence, and we've developed a really important national communications campaign called Sound. And this engaged directly with men and boys in addressing Fawdr SV across Wales. And our campaign has recognised the importance of positive role models in young people's lives. Key focus in the campaign is positive role modelling from peers, communities and influencers in the public domain. And those conversations can increase male awareness of early red flag Fawdr SV behaviours. It can increase male participation in conversations around healthy relationships to challenge harmful behaviours and attitudes towards women, but increasing male understanding around levels of harm that can be associated with violence against women. And, you know, I think what's been so great about Sound is it's been led by men, it's been led by young men, it's been led, and so many men then have engaged with it as they do with our, you know, with the Right Ribbon campaign, which we'll be supporting later on this year. So in closing, the Lost Boys State of the Nation does ring a clarion call. We are witnessing a generational drift among some boys and young men in the UK. Wales is not immune. If we're serious about fairness, about nurturing human potential, about vibrant communities and a stronger future, we must confront these challenges head on. And recognising the crisis is not about favouring one gender over the other. It's about acknowledging real divergence in experience and need, making sure our systems, policies, our voices, our hearts are attuned to lifting all children. Let's commit ourselves to shaping a Wales where every boy grows into a healthy, hopeful, contributing man, enriched by opportunity, dignity and purpose. So I hope that gives you a bit of a positive reflection from government before you discuss all this with the panel and with everyone here today. So sorry I can't stay with you, but wish you well. Diolch yn fawr. Thanks. Thanks very much, everyone. Over to Robin, I think.
Thank you, Jane, for that. Fy enw i Robin Miller, a fi oedd aelod seneddol San Steffan dros Aberconwy, ond, wel, ces I fy ngeni am magu ym Mangor, ond, wel, ar ailwyd i Gymraeg, felly mae'n rhaid i mi siarad Saesneg heno. Good evening, everybody. My name is Robin Miller. I was the MP for Westminster across Aberconwy in the last Parliament. I was born and raised in Bangor. Welsh is my second language, so I will very much stick to English this evening, so forgive me for that. But coming from North Wales, we were very struck, and Sam will recognise this, I'm sure, but coming from North Wales, you realise that if you want to get a job, if you want to get ahead, if you want to build a career and make something of yourself, you have to leave. And that was very much the case for me growing up too. So when I went to Parliament eventually, it was very much with a view to how do we improve things in North Wales. So I'm delighted to be here this evening, delighted to introduce you to our panel as well. And I'll come to them in a moment, but Ed Davis on the end is the Research Director at the Centre for Social Justice. Then we have Ali Wheeler, who's the Chief Executive of We Mind the Gap. Next to me we have Ken Owen, former captain, 2023 season of the Welsh Rugby Union, and a legend in his own town, the Sheriff of Carmarthen, I believe is his nickname. And if he decides to do something completely different this evening, I'm not going to argue with him. And at the end we have, last but not least, Sam Rowlands. Sam I've known for many years, and Sam is the regional member for North Wales, Conservative member of the Senedd for North Wales. So could I start, Ed, with you, just by coming to you for a few minutes of introduction. I believe you've got some slides as well.
I have. I'm afraid Jane's great work of making this feel positive, I'm about to depress us all with the slides based on the report. Just to add my thanks for being here. Actually, Sam turned up at our offices in Westminster a few months ago and said, you've got to do an event down at the Senedd. And we looked at each other and thought, yeah, why not? But we've been taking this, as Jane said, around the country, and we wanted to come to Wales because Wales has just the same problems as England, as Scotland, as we're experiencing in a lot of the Western world, to be honest, at the moment. And as I go through the stats, they're going to feel familiar. On a personal note as well, I'm an alumni of Wenvo Primary, which is 5 miles west of here, and I was a chorister at Llandaff Cathedral School. I've been away for 35 years, and I love what you've done with the place. So, yeah, the Arms Park looks very different, but I like it. So, yeah, basically a number of organisations came to us over the last couple of years and said, there is something going on with our boys. We're not sure what, but there is something happening at the moment. And so we went out to try and put numbers to this feeling. So you can see on that slide, we went 30 visits, we had a call for evidence with about 100 responses, we targeted focus groups, large-scale polling, and just came up with a bunch of numbers. It's quite a dry report, it's about 75 pages of numbers, but we put them into 6 different categories to try and give you the idea of what it's like being a young man growing up in the UK at the moment. And the first one, I got my slides. There we go. Press it harder. Was employment. When we launched this paper, the thing that the newspapers were really interested was the reversal of the gender pay gap. So in the first 10 years of work now, you're likely to earn 10% more as a woman than as a man. And that's a sort of an inversion of the narrative that's gone on for the last few years. So it captured everyone's imagination. Obviously, like personally, not that fussed by it unless I understand why. And when we looked at the why are men starting to earn less? Why are women moving forward and men are just staying stagnant? What we found was men are now more likely to be unemployed, more likely to be economically inactive. And in those first years, 16 to 24 not in education, employment or training. The numbers have soared in the last few years. So since COVID, the number of 16 to 24-year-old men who are completely out of action has gone up by 40%. It's gone up for girls too, but only by 7%, so 40% in boys. So there's something going on there with employment that's really significant. Next up, okay, education, and this speaks to the employment thing. What's been going on in education in recent years? Essentially now boys start behind on the first day at school and are behind in every single level of exams. So they're behind in SATs, GCSEs, A-levels, T-levels, these new technical exams. We thought boys might perform better in technical and vocational. You're much more likely to get a distinction as a girl. They're less likely to go to university and will do worse at university. But that stat on there on school readiness is a really key one. The Westminster government has said they want to get to 75% school readiness by the end of this parliament. And as you can see from that, they're already there with girls. 75% of girls are school ready, but with boys, it's only 60%. So there's a big question there. This clicker's going to kill me. There we go. Okay, health. So there's lots of different health stats, but that chart is one of the more depressing charts you will see. Don't worry too much about the detail, but it's suicide rates for men and women in every 5 years of life. So the red bars are men and the grey bars are women. And in every single 5-year segment of life, men will take their lives at about 3 to 4 times the rate that women do. The one other number I'd flag on there is 95% of steroid users are men. This is something that has sort of taken us slightly by surprise. There aren't any good numbers on steroid use. We were estimating that there might be as many as 1 million steroid users in the UK. But I wanted to flag that as well because there's been some good research coming out of South Wales on this. I say good research, it's quite depressing research. But there's quite high use of steroids among young men in South Wales in particular. Are we depressed enough already? We're halfway through. Keep going. I'm going to make this one interactive to try and keep you awake. So, families and fatherlessness. 2.5 million children going out without a father at home. This has changed enormously over 50 years. I'm going to try and illustrate it with this room. Was anyone here born in the 1950s? We've got one. Okay. We've got one that will admit to it. Well done. Okay, if you were born in late 50s, if you were born in 1958, by the time you sat your O-levels, you had a 90% chance of living with both your mum and dad. Who here was born in the 70s? Quite a few of us. Yeah. Okay, if you were born in 1970, by the time you sat your O-levels, it had gone down by 10%. So it was about 80% chance you lived with your mum and dad. Who was born this century? I know there's a few of you. Yeah. Okay. If you were born in the year 2000, by the time you reached your GCSEs, as they were then, you had about a 50% chance of living with both your mum and dad. So the change that's taken place in family life over the last 50 years is absolutely enormous. And so that having that present father figure at home has significantly changed. Crime, I'll rattle through the last two. Okay, so crime, this just illustrates that most of crime is a male problem. 96% of the prison population are men, and 97% and rising of the youth estate. The last three numbers on there, criminal exploitation, violent offences and knife crime, those are victims. So men are 90% of victims in all those crimes. And last but by no means least, there we go. Technology and pornography. There's a lot to say here around the Andrew Tates and the social medias of this world, and I'm going to be quite graphic, so apologies, but I think it's really important we understand how significant this is around pornography. If you are over 50, there is a 3% chance you've ever been choked during sex. If you're under 30, it's a 1 in 3 chance. They've had to actually open a new organisation to look into what is going on here because the relationship between men and women has so fundamentally changed in the last 10 years. A slightly depressing note to leave it on, but that's what I've got for you, Robin.
Thank you, I think. There is a lot there to take on board, but am I correct in summarising that by saying there is a pattern of divergence here, of the outcomes, the education, at all points there's a diversion between boys and girls and men and women? Okay, thank you.
Very much so.
I'm going to go now to Sam. Sam, as I said, is the regional Senedd member for North Wales. Sam, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Robin. Good evening, everybody.
Thank you for coming on this evening. I'm really pleased to see colleagues from across parties with us this evening as well. So I'm grateful for your attendance. And one record my thanks to Jane for opening our event this evening. Cabinet secretaries are very busy people, so grateful she was able to take some time to be with us this evening. As I'd mentioned, I popped along to the gang at the CSJ a few months back off the back of this report and another report that they produced, and I think what struck me was that when this report launched in England, they had Gareth Southgate to help promote that, and I thought, well, in Wales we like our sport, but we're not always massive fans of English football managers, so I'm really pleased that Ken, you've been able to join us this evening as well from the sports side of things, so glad to have you with us this evening. For me, there's a few things that kind of jump out off the back of this report, and the first is around the fact that some of the measures that have just been explained that Ed's just gone through there are actually devolved areas of competency, so the areas that the Welsh Government is responsible for. So I'm really pleased CSJ have recognised that, because lots of organisations do forget that devolution exists, quite frankly, so when things are discussed, it's often in an English-only context. But particularly those big areas of health, which is more than half of the Welsh Government spend, there are measures within there that we need to understand why are young men taking their lives, dying through suicide, for a starter, and this place has experienced some of that in very recent times as well. It's very raw for people in this place at the moment. But so we need to get underneath that. Why is that the case? I was sat with the Samaritans just last week who explained to me that people dying through road deaths versus suicide in Wales. Actually, you're 5 times more likely to die of suicide in Wales than you are from a road death. And we put all sorts of measures around protecting people on our roads and that sort of thing. So what are we doing to protect our young men around suicide? It's really, really important areas. There's areas around health that actually, mental health in particular, that I think a devolved government like here in Wales has responsibility for, and reports like this highlight where we could have more of a focus. There's points around education, another devolved area of competence for a Welsh government. Young men having less good outcomes at the end of their time in education. Why is that? Have we set up a system which shoves people into a classroom for long days, where actually lots of boys don't respond very well in those environments sometimes? And I did a piece of work on this around outdoor education in recent years about how do we expand education beyond the classroom. Actually, there's real evidence for boys in particular, they learn really well outside of the classroom. So there's some work there we perhaps need to think about as well. I'm really keen, and when I held a short debate on this report in the chamber here earlier this year, and I made the point, this is not a zero-sum game. This is not about girls versus boys or young ladies versus young men on this. Actually, it's great to see girls doing well in certain areas. We also need to see boys do really well in those areas as well. It's not one versus the other. And just a couple of quick thoughts before perhaps move on. The thing that strikes me is this issue around belonging for young men and for boys. They want to belong to something. I'm not really sure they know what's there for them to belong to at the moment. And I think as society more broadly, there's something there. Lots of big institutions have moved away from young men. And actually, there's not the things they then choose to belong to perhaps aren't healthy for them. So there's a conversation around belonging. I also think there's a conversation around responsibility. I think boys and young men respond really well to being given responsibility. I was just reflecting earlier, I raised a few times, when I was 13, I got my first job as a paperboy, 7 mornings a week, getting up at 6 o'clock in the morning. I got a Saturday job in a local fruit and veg shop in Abergele. I know there's an Abergeleite here somewhere else. But I got a Saturday job in a fruit and veg shop, and as a kid, 13-year-old boy, that responsibility perhaps helped me in some grounding, taught me some really important disciplines and lessons. I'm not advocating child labour or slave labour of any type, but actually for my daughter turned 13 over the summer. Trying to find her a job at the moment is near impossible, and she desperately wants one. 16-year-olds are finding really hard to find work at the moment, perhaps even 18-year-olds find it very difficult. I think we've seen that 40% increase in boys being out of work versus 7% of girls being out of work at the moment. So there's things around responsibility which helps create discipline, which I think is a big gap there at the moment. There's a few more things I could talk about, but time's flying, Robin, so I'll pause there for a moment. That's all right with you.
Thanks, Sam. I think what's striking me already is how much of this we're recognising bits of our own experience in it, and I'm sure a lot of the facts that Ed shared are resonating with each of us in different ways, but thanks for that, Sam. I really appreciate that. Ken, over to you.
No, thank you. Diolch am y croeso yma heno. Thank you for the welcome. This is a new experience for me. Recently retired, so bear with me if I get a bit nervous or start waffling. But I'm from Carmarthen, from West Wales, which is a very interesting place to live, shall we say. And I have 2 young boys, 10 and 2, and see the challenges that sort of they're growing up with at the moment. A little bit younger than some of the data in this report, but probably seen it being an elder statesman of a professional rugby club and seeing the youngsters coming through into our academy systems and the challenges that they're facing. I think when I got asked to speak tonight and obviously went through the report, it shouts out the issues we're having. A small community in West Wales, sport gave me the opportunity to make something of my life and do things that I wouldn't never have dreamed of doing. My friends had their aspirations and didn't quite make it, but I think the opportunity that sport can give you could help solve a lot of these problems. But I think what is happening now, especially in the sporting world, is there's a huge emphasis on professionalism, elitism, performance, and not enjoyment. When I started playing sport, I played so I could go and play with my mates, play with my friends and have a good time. Sport gave me resilience. You win and lose. You've got to bounce back and move forward. Honesty, friendship, teamwork, everything that comes with that. I think that has been lost within sport especially at the moment, which is transcending then into everyday life. Also, sport is becoming inaccessible, I think, for the common person now. My son plays various different sports. I'm fortunate we're able to afford to send him there, but certain individuals at the lower end of society and financially are struggling to access that and offer their children the opportunity to have the experiences that I fortunately have, and I'm able to give my children that. And it's not all about making it as a professional, but I think from communities we've all been there. You join a local rugby club, for example, and I've got friends who, if they weren't brought into the rugby club, would have gone down a very different path in life. They got an opportunity, got a job from a local builder, a local scaffolder, or whatever it might be, got given that confidence. They run their own businesses now, and I think that's a huge part of what I've seen in that, and the opportunities that aren't there for our young boys, especially growing up. And I think the other one then is obviously from my son's experience in school, very shy, lack of confidence, possibly because of the effects of who his father was, and drifted in the expectation that was of him. But then the lack of confidence the school gave him, we moved for different reasons, went to a new school, and they just built his confidence up, found out what is his interest, what is he good at, giving him the basic education he needs. But I think we need to be looking at the education system and going, it's not a one-size-fits-all. We need to give everybody a basic education, but I think we have an understanding of neurodiversity, challenges that young people face. Well, how can we fit an education system that works for them to kick on? And I think it was all reflected in that report of what I'm seeing just in my local area, my community, and what I'm seeing with my 2 sons and the challenges they're facing. But obviously the the social media side of it, it's, I think Gareth Southgate said, it's having positive and good role models, and I don't think there's a lot of them around now, because what they're viewing on social media is not a realistic reflection of society, and the gap is appearing between even Welsh rugby players to what they were 10 or 15 years ago, to now, because of the social media world, that it's not a true reflection of life. And I think, you know, my son wants to be a YouTuber, but I said not everybody is going to be a YouTuber. You can always dream, and I think that's the massive issue of educating young people, of going, what you see online isn't a true reflection of life.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Ken, just for the benefit of everybody, I'll come to Ali in just a moment, but just for the benefit of everybody who may not know, when you say you're from West Wales, is West Wales like Cardiff?
No, everybody in West Wales knows each other. No, yeah, so I'm from Carmarthen, which is sort of the centre point of West Wales, and it's, you know, we're a very tight-knit community, whether it be sporting, rugby, cricket, football, farming, the Operatic Society, which I was a part of, which I didn't mention there, but it was a, you know, a huge life opportunity for me. So yeah, it's not quite like Cardiff. It's a bit more diverse in a different way, I suppose, but faces the same challenges.
Thanks. I speak from, as I said, from North Wales, and I recognise there's a real diversity of communities across Wales. Ken, I will come back to you and I'll ask you a question about the role of the rugby club in Welsh communities, because I think that's quite distinctive within Wales, even to other parts of the UK. But I'm really excited to introduce Ali again. Ali is the Chief Executive of the charity in Wrexham, We Mind the Gap. And I'm very interested, Ali, to hear, I know you've prepared some notes, but to hear about the charity and more of what you do.
Thank you very much, Robin. Bodydoll, good evening, and thank you very much for this opportunity. I've made some notes, but I've been busy scribbling. There's so many things I want to build on from what Sam and Ken has said, but let me tell you a bit about We Mind the Gap and bring this to life for you tonight, about the amazing young people we work with that are sat at home or wherever, as we're sat here tonight. So We Mind the Gap is a social mobility charity working across North Wales and the northwest of England. We support young people aged 11 to 25 who have fallen through the gaps in life, those not in education, employment and training, often living with multiple adverse childhood experiences. For 10 years, we have delivered employability programs that change lives. One, We Grow, runs for a year, offering structured mentoring, meaningful work experiences, life coaching and wraparound support. Another, now, is We Bridge, is roll on, roll off, so young people can walk in from the street and get immediate help. But our work is not just about skills, it is holistic. We say we will always do what is right and not what is easy. It's about belonging, it's trust, and it's about having someone to walk alongside you. Through We Belong, our alumni community, our young people remain connected with us and their peers and their mentors and opportunities. It's a lifelong community that sustains progression and prevents relapse into isolation. The Centre for Social Justice's Lost Boys findings report, shared by the Cabinet Secretary in Ed tonight, make for real difficult reading. But let me bring that to life for you whilst we're sat here. In just 2 areas in which we are currently working in North Wales, there are 1,648 young people, 734 of them not in employment, education or training. And in another area, 1,760, 774 of those being male. And we know that they are probably not the true numbers, as many more are hidden in circumstances where they have fallen through the gaps. At We Mind the Gap, we see the reality of the Lost Boys report every day. Over the last 3 years, referrals of young men to our programs have risen sharply. Today, in our current 2 programs in those areas I've just referred to, 8 out of 10 of the young people involved are young men. And interestingly, most of those have a neurodiverse diagnosis. Yet when given the right support, they thrive. 6 out of 10 when they complete our We Grow year-long programme, move into work and stay there. Others return to education. Some even start their own business. All gain independence and hope. Through our another programme, We Discover, which bridges the gap between the online world and the offline world, there are more where young people rarely leave their bedrooms. We see the same pattern. More young men join, they spend more time in mentoring with our team, and their attendance is double that of young women. The message for me is really clear. Young men are looking for purpose, friendship, community, and role models. And when we find them, they take up that opportunity. At We Mind the Gap, we say it takes a village to raise a child, but a system to mind their gaps. Our young men are not disengaged because they lack ambition. They are disengaged because the system has not worked for them. As I often say, young people only know what they know, and so it's up to us as society to show them their potential. At We Mind the Gap, we see every day how purpose, structure, and someone caring, looking out for you can transform lives. In North Wales, the inequalities gap is still widening. Geography, transport barriers, and limited training opportunities magnify those risks. Add into that poverty, poor housing, and reduced access to mental health support. These are not just health issues, these are life chance issues. Without urgent intervention, too many of our young people, especially young men, will be left without skills, confidence, and opportunities that they need to thrive. And yet there is hope, and we see it every day. The Centre for Social Justice Research and the lived experience of charities like We Mind the Gap show that with that purpose, structure, the belonging that we've heard tonight, with that, young people can and do succeed. But we cannot do this alone. We must build the system to support them together, where no young person is left behind and every young person has the chance to thrive. Thank you.
Now I see people poised with microphones ready to take questions from the floor. So just while you're thinking of some questions, I know there will be, because if you haven't been provoked by what's been said, then check your pulse. It's been very stimulating. So I will just ask a couple of questions, but if you want to ask a question, please raise your hand and Sophie will come and bring a mic to you. Ed, I wonder if I could just come to you. You're the expert. You've caused all this trouble, okay? You've produced the report with these quite shocking statistics and facts. What next? How do we take those on board? How do we deal with them?
Yeah, great question. If you've got any answers, I'd love to hear them. And we are going to be looking at sort of specific different kinds of answers in the months ahead. I think of all the data we analysed, all the things we looked at, we read loads of books, the one phrase that stuck with me the whole way through has been that someone will father your son. Someone will father your son. And so, I mean, that has obvious implications for family life at the moment and a lot of absent fathers, but it has implications right the way through society. Who are the men in boys' lives at the moment? So at primary school, a third of primary schools have no men at all. So if you haven't got a dad at home, you might well not have any at primary school either. Youth clubs are closing down regularly. There's been a huge decline over the last 15 years of youth clubs. We've talked a lot about sport. Sport comes up a lot in this. Sport is a great place to find male role models as a teenage boy in particular. But then when you get to the sort of the wider societal level, if you don't have these touch points for boys in their lives, then the first touch point they will find is quite possibly an Andrew Tate or whoever it might be. It is that slightly malign influence. And the problem with a lot of these sort of online influencers is not that they're just terrible, awful, horrendous. It's that 80% of what they say isn't that bad. It's get a job, like work out, stop watching porn, make something of yourself. But it comes with this horrible, toxic side order of really unpleasant stuff. But if we are not fathering, both literally and metaphorically, our boys through society, then we can't be surprised if that's where they end up looking elsewhere.
Thank you for that. I know Sam mentioned this word of belonging, and I'm quite surprised at how quickly in this conversation we've come to things like hope and belonging, because actually I think these are at the back of it. But Ken, two things there that Ed has said which really resonate, and I think reflected in what you said. One is the importance of sport, and this phrase, someone will father your son. Is that something that you have seen that you can relate to?
Yeah, definitely. My personal experience, like I said, I spent most of my childhood in the local rugby club and cricket club, but was fortunate to, be involved in the youth opera as well. And, I had several positive role models. Some negative role models have taught me things that perhaps I shouldn't have been taught as a youngster. But, it is hugely important. I had a brilliant father who gave me opportunity, who taught me good values, but he was away a lot working to provide for us as a family. I had uncles who were about who brought me up and who were around as well. A godfather who was a hard-working local businessman, and then obviously the spent a lot of time, as I said, in the rugby club, and had good people around me there who would tell you right from wrong if you were, and that's how you learn. You've got to make mistakes along the way in your life, but if you've got good people around you, they will show you the way. And I think, and luckily, probably early on in my school life, I was slowly going down the wrong path a little bit, and I had a fantastic mentor and PE teacher, Mr. Heaven Elias, and who gave me the opportunity, gave me the confidence to become what I am today, and really give me sort of that direction. I think young people, young boys especially, need that. It's not just the father figures. It's obviously great if they have got positive father figures, but that's not the case for everyone. I think we have to identify and encourage other people to do that. And I think Ali said earlier, give young boys opportunities and show them the way, and they will take it. And I think that's massively important.
Ali, I'll come to you to respond to that in just a moment. I'm still looking for hands here. But Ken, you said something there very important. You talked about values and the people around you, your father, your uncle, your godfather, and being part of the club. I'm going to put you on the spot here. Can you give us a for instance, when you said you were going down the wrong path and how someone has just intervened and maybe grabbed you literally by the scruff of the neck? I don't know, but can you give us a for instance to show what it is that you mean?
Yeah, so I'd broken my leg basically as a 15, 16-year-old. I was a very promising rugby player, which then did in the end. But I then, didn't quite make the Wales under-16 squad. Then went down a path where I started playing just at my local club. I was still in school, but then probably and I don't be negative about Carmarthen, but it's a great place to grow up. But we love a pint in Carmarthen, and
I don't believe it.
But it was a big, heavy drinking culture, and I would, Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday, play. I'd be playing on a Saturday for the local youth team, or wherever, and then it'd be a Sunday as well. And I remember being on tour with the school, and which was Mr. Elias. He sort of intervened. And I got injured on that tour. I'd broken my hand, so I only played in one game. And then, even though I was away with school, my instincts of being on a club rugby took in, and I was enjoying myself a bit too much. And I made a joke pre-match, and needless to say, I made a joke, win or lose, we're on it tonight, boys, type of thing. And that was probably the first instance where he snapped at me and sort of took me to one side and really drove it home of what I was actually doing in my life. I was a good rugby player and enjoyed myself. I'd missed out and sort of gone, well, this is my life now, I'm just going to move on. And that's probably the first instance where he really intervened. And then the second one came, I managed to get back into sort of the Scarlet setup, and he had a phone call from the national coaches at the time from the under-19 squad, and I was a year younger. As you can say, I was obviously underage drinking at the time with a lot of what I was saying, so which is obviously shouldn't be done. But and he had a phone call, and he sat me down, and it was about 6 or 7 weeks after coming back from South Africa, and he just went, "Look, what do you want to do with your life? You're a very good rugby player. Yes, it hasn't worked out for you so far, but you've got an opportunity. You got, which path do you want to go down? Do you want to just be the local rugby player who probably play about 400 games for Carmarthen Athletic and enjoy and get on with it, or do you want to make something of your life and give it a go? What have you got to lose?" And it's fine going, yes, I want to do that, but then you need somebody to have faith in you and, you know, take you out at lunchtime, stay after school with you, do the extra training sessions, you know, follow you around the school canteen and say, you can't eat that, you can't eat this. But it was lucky I had him, because my father could have told me that and I'd have ignored him.
Right.
But because he said it to me, a different voice, and thankfully I listened and had that chance.
Thank you. Sam, I'll come to you in a minute from a government perspective. How do you turn all of this into something through government? But Ali, I'd like to come back to you, because what Ken's just said there about, in some ways, is a reflection of what you were saying about it takes a village. And he's talking about those other figures, authority figures in his life, who took him on one side and said, you need to do stuff, because he wouldn't necessarily listen to his father. You said something extraordinary. You said that 6 out of 10 of the boys that you work with move into work and stay there. That's a phenomenal conversion rate, to use a rugby language, conversion rate compared to many public sector programs. Can you tell us a little bit about what's the magic, what's the secret sauce that you use that is so effective?
We call it magic fairy dust.
Okay.
And we celebrate the little wins because there are thousands of them every day for young people. I would say our programme is a year long and then beyond. So it's not a 6-week fix. There isn't a light bulb you can switch over. Our programme, we employ our young people and take them off benefits to break that cycle of dependency, to change the conversation that's happening in their home and with their peers, and to teach them that actually there's real value that when you earn your money and you buy your first record, and I'm talking about a young man in one of our programmes, when he bought his first record, he says, I'm never going back on universal credit because I've earned this. So again, it's that sense of purpose and structure, 30 hours a week. And it starts with life coaching, interwoven with mentoring. It's, you know, we've got role models in our teams. We have incredible staff. We have amazing employer partners who take a trauma-informed approach to offering meaningful work experience to our young people. Work experience is at a 10-year all-time low. And many schools now don't offer work experience. So we talk about trusted referrers and the power of connections. I can imagine that most people got their work experience in this room, I won't do for a show of hands, through somebody that they know or has helped somebody with somebody that they know to get work experience. If you're one of our young people, you don't have that power of connections and therefore your inequalities gap is growing. Also within there, so our young people go to incredible employer partners who are prepared to think and act differently about how they offer meaningful work experience to young people. So if a young person fights and flights on their first day and they haven't got somebody at home putting their arm around saying to them, it's okay, let's go back tomorrow, then, you know, many employers would, because they're running businesses, would say it is really difficult. We did a survey with employers over the last 2 years, and you know it's very difficult in this new hybrid world, and I totally understand how challenging it is. Employers have told us to recruit, retrain and progress young people is really challenging. But through our programme, not only do we help young people try work experiences that they think they want to do, we also get them to try things that they would never want to do. Because it's important that you find out what you don't like as much as you do like. So a young girl could come to us and say, I want to work in a children's nursery. 2 hours in, I ain't working with children anymore, is what they say. And you'll find that they find skills by working in the care sector or the theatre sector or in manufacturing. So that in-work mentoring, which is what my mum and dad gave me, and what I give my children now as they're establishing their careers, is what our team offer our young people as well. And it's that constancy of support. It's a commitment to show up and it's about that purpose, that structure, because many of our young people, they don't know how to get up in the morning because they've got no purpose. They haven't got up in the morning and had breakfast and had a good night's sleep for many years, so they need that structure in life, but it's that sense of belonging. And if I could share a statistic with you, the World Happiness Report had a comparable statistic that there is 23% of young people across the world feel lonely and isolated. We did 2 pieces of research in Wrexham and Flintshire over the last 2 years, where comparably 49% and 47% of young people aged 18 to 21 said that they did not feel like they belonged. If you don't belong, you are lonely, you are isolated, and loneliness and isolation is a bigger killer than smoking. So this is a national crisis, and it should be dealt with as a crisis. So, I mean, yeah, it's time for other people to speak, but there is some, you know, it's really important that we understand that this is going to take time, it's going to take structure, but that role modelling and mentorship and giving people purpose and structure and that belonging is absolutely crucial.
Thank you. I have some hands. I've clocked
Sorry.
you. I'm going to give Sam a chance to say something here about the government's role in all this. Sam, government is often accused of being remote, of trying to manage things with a long-handled screwdriver, of doing stuff from the top down, of being this great clunking thing. How do you in government work with organisations like Allies, clubs like the ones that Ken is a part of, and communities in the work that they are doing?
Yeah, thanks, Robin. So just to be really clear, I'm not in government. But there is government here in Wales, which I think has a role to play. You're absolutely right. And the first thing I think is for governments and then members of the Senedd like myself, just to recognise the issue and to talk about this. It's not just, I think, for too long, as Ed opened up with, there's murmurings, there's chattering on the go, but people not willing to actually acknowledge there's a problem here. Thankfully, CSJ done some research into this, but acknowledging there's an issue here in the attainment outcomes of boys versus girls, or young men versus young women, and I can't know how else to say this, but sort of embrace the awkwardness a little bit, especially when we talk about families, because it's really awkward to talk about families and family breakdown, because we've all got messy families. And as politicians, you often like to speak from a place of authority and getting things right. So as soon as you start talking about family, you feel awkward talking about it, because even good old politicians have messy families where things aren't as they should be. So I think we've got to be willing to talk about those things, acknowledge that things like our own families, there might be family breakdown, and things that aren't as we want them to be, but it doesn't mean we can't talk about those things. I mean, it doesn't mean we can't strive to something better than we see today. So that's a bit of a fluffy start to an answer, but we have to start acknowledging these issues, otherwise there's no way solutions will be found. And you know, I've stood up a couple of times in the chamber when there's been statements from government ministers, and it's not necessarily the fault of the ministers themselves, but we'll have like an hour-long discussion, debate or statement from ministers where the word parent or family is not mentioned whenever we're talking about school or social care and those sort of things. So the word parent not even being mentioned, and the role of parents in the lives of children. We've just got to use that language in our conversation much more to put some emphasis on there. You may not be surprised, Robin, I get a bit concerned sometimes when government thinks it can fix all things. Frankly, it can't, and it shouldn't. It is down to families, parents, friends to do much of this. But what government can do is put the structures in place to support families to do this as best as possible. There's great organisations out there, whether it's charities or other organisations, which can provide a lot of this support to fundamentally support families in sticking together as best as possible. That's the root of what's going on here, I think. And then when things do get difficult, I mentioned Samaritans earlier, there's organisations who can provide this support, which perhaps aren't getting all the support that they themselves need. In terms of levers that government has directly here in Wales, we've mentioned education. There are, there's things like government could ensure that there's space within the curriculum to meet some of the needs of boys and young men in particular. Recognise that, as I said earlier, boys learn sometimes in different ways to girls, and give space to teachers in particular as well to support young men in their learning as well. And in terms of health, the other big lever that government here in Wales has recognised that young men's mental health and the way they present themselves isn't always that clear. Lads often might say things that aren't as obvious to what girls may say when they're dealing with their mental health challenges. They may not always be as emotional with how they present themselves. So government, in my view, should be ensuring that those professionals are recognising those differences that young men and boys have in terms of how they present themselves around mental health issues in particular, which may not always be as clear as other people.
Thank you very much. To the floor. Would you please, when you ask your question, would you please just tell us who you are? And if you start making long statements, I'm afraid I will have to cut you off.
That's fine. So my name is Natalie Sargent. I'm a development manager with the Coalfields Regeneration Trust. But I'm sitting here with a number of different hats on, I think, at the moment, because I'm also a parent of 3 children, 1 boy and 2 girls over the age of 16, who have had very different opportunities, despite having similar education, similar, attainments, etc. And I'm also a long-standing volunteer with the Youth Offending Service, so very familiar with things like the trauma-informed training and all of those things, which I think, all parents should have access to, never mind, just people who are working in those areas. But one thing I'm really keen on is what next, I think. And I know a lot of people have said it can't be a one-size-approach fits all. What we're seeing, obviously, is the need is increasing, the data is horrendous. But what do we do now? We can't keep waiting. We can't keep waiting for the next government or the next, policy or things to come in. So what, as a collective, could we do? And whether or not we can have access to some of the data that you might have, that raw data, specifically for Wales, so that we can perhaps look at working together, working collaboratively. I know my local rugby club, they've said that, they're diversifying. They're having mental health support coming in, doing training. They're having education providers coming in and delivering training. They've already noticed some of these things. There's some good examples there where people are acting on it. What can we do, though, to make it stronger, I think?
Thank you. There's a gentleman behind. Could I take a couple of questions and then I'll make sure that's not lost? But Ed, can we just confirm that the data is available through the report, or is there more to share beyond the report?
So yeah, we can, if you get the full report, look at the references as well.
Okay. So we have one question which is about what next and what now. And yes, sir.
My name is Alan Evans. I was at Cardiff University for 30 years, and I was for 20 years head of education for the National Union of Teachers in London. I run 2 projects on underachievement of boys, 1997 to 1999 in West Wales, in the Amman Valley, in the Cymmer Valley, in Pontarddulais, Swansea. And in 18 months, we transformed the gap. We reduced the gap to an extent that the boys were improved 2 grades in English literature in GCSE. But within 2 years, we had no money for after funding. It died and they went back where they were before. 10 years later, in Caerphilly, the local authority paid, and we had 6 secondary schools, 25 primary schools, and again, we massively reduced the gap for 2 years. And then a new education officer came, new priorities, and it went. Now, Ed Davis said, what are we going to do? You need a 10-year plan. One in every 5 people in Britain is directly involved in education. 10 million pupils, 2 million students in higher education, and 2 million people, teachers, lecturers, administrative assistants. We are an education-led. We've got to win the hearts of the teaching profession.
Okay.
We've got to change the culture of the school. We changed the culture of school when we went from secondary modern and grammar to comprehensive. It took a while. Lots of the comprehensive schools in early on were really bilateral. They weren't proper comprehensive schools. As they were in Angles, they were proper comprehensive schools.
Okay.
So we need to win the hearts and minds of teachers, but it's a long haul. And you need to do it consistently. And if you take your foot off the accelerator, it'll go back.
Okay, I'll stop you there. I think it's a very powerful point you're making. Sophie, can we go to the next questions? But panel, Ed, I'm going to start with you, if I may. How do you win the hearts and minds of education? The culture wars takes on a new front.
Goodness.
Very good question.
So, I mean, just in terms of the what next, I think schools do have a part to play. I think, thinking of that sort of framing of who are the men around boys, that there are family services, there are schools, there are sports clubs, there are all these layers around boys. But one of the big questions we're coming to is basically scale. As you say, the problem is really big. And to your point there, the funding comes and goes from government and what have you. And I think part of the reason we have been so keen to get people like Ken and Gareth Southgate and people like that involved is we've suddenly realised we're not talking to government about this. We're talking to them as one of many, many different levers across the whole of society. I think one of the things we're going to be looking at in the months ahead is basically how do we mobilise men to get more involved in young boys' lives. One of the things that's come back, we work with hundreds of charities. One of the things that keeps coming back to us is that they don't really get male volunteers. And there may be all sorts of reasons for that. But we need to find them from somewhere because this isn't going to happen through a movement of government, I don't think. There'll be bits of school involved, there'll be bits of sports club, but it will happen as a society and a culture first and foremost.
Thank you. Ali.
I'd like to respond to your point, if I can, Natalie. I'd love to speak to you as well, Alan, about sustainability of programmes. So 2 points really to answer your question. I think to come back to our saying it takes a village to raise a child but a system to mind the gaps, what we have to do now is work as a system. And that system is government, that's programmes like ourselves, but also communities, because we can get young people ready for work, and if employers are ready to employ young people, but the transport systems don't enable young people to get from their front door to the world of work, we are letting young people and employers down. So we have to look at a system-wide approach where our buses and our trains are aligned, and they're aligned to the start times of work as well. And that's just one, just one simplistic system approach. There are many more I could talk about. So that's that system approach which we need to start looking at now. The second one, and it builds on what you're saying there, is what we're doing to respond to this is that we believe that the power lies within communities, and that we are calling through our ambition of a power of 10,000 connections members of the community to help build the social capital of young people, the building blocks that I got from my granddad in the garage from the age of 6 when my mum and dad were out for work. So we're asking people to put their hand up and say, I'll give 2 hours to help Jane or John or Peter or Susan to help build their social capital. And this isn't about CV writing. This is about investing time and your energy and your skills and just your time in young people's social capital. And that Power 10,000 Connections, we believe, is going to mine the gaps in that community footprint that isn't there in the which is lacking in the social fabric of our communities at the moment. So I hope that answers a little bit.
Who was it who said, don't underestimate what a few determined people can do, because that's the only thing that ever has changed things. Sam?
So completely endorse what has already been said by the panel in response to those questions. I know, Natalie, you said don't really want to wait for another government to come along, but whether we like it or not, there's elections next May. So this is a great time to get in the ear of politicians and political parties. I'm telling you right now, they're writing manifestos ahead of that election in May. They'll be promising all sorts of things, as good old politicians like we enjoy doing that. So this is an absolute perfect time to sit down with your local representatives, your local Senedd members, and when those candidates are announced ahead of the elections in May, because they're absolutely ripe for being challenged on these issues and come forward with some of those solutions. So I would say, as a politician, of course, those elections in May are likely to be pretty lively. So this is a good time to speak to those prospective candidates and political parties to ask them to put these issues front and centre of their manifesto.
The good politicians will be interested, I promise you. We bemoan the fact that people don't pay more attention at election times, so please do bend their ears. Right, a couple more questions quickly. You, sir.
Hi, my name is Richard Einan. I run a life coaching company, and I'm a qualified youth worker and worked with young people for a very long time. I live in Mountain Ash, and it's a lovely place. It's one of the nicest places I've ever lived, and I've lived across the world. But I'm increasingly concerned on how young people, and young boys particularly, are perceived within their region, within their schools, where there's a lot of emphasis on education attainment, and where young boys particularly are cracking under that pressure of education and attainment. Not necessarily in that region, but also I've seen it in high achieving schools as well. And I guess, Ali, it comes to your point. I don't see many schools or communities engaging young boys and asking them what their purpose is and what their value base is and where they're going and where they want to go. And I guess that's a question to the panel is, you know, it's really easy to put structure in place for help people to attain well, for people to not be involved in mental health services or not be involved in other things. But it's really hard to measure some of those real key things, which are the foundations for not just young people, but for the people of Wales.
Very good, very good. And the gentleman in the pink sweatshirt at the end there. Forgive me, it looks pink from here. It might be a different colour.
No, it is pink.
Okay,
It's my colour. I'll try to be as succinct as I possibly can. I've kind of got a two-part question. I teach rap and literacy through music in schools all over South Wales.
Sorry, what's your name, please?
Sheldon, the
Sheldon.
rapper. It's actually on my jumper. There you go. I teach in PRUs. I've taught with Young Offending Service, a youth offending team, and I've taught with youth clubs and schools all over South Wales. One of the biggest problems I have at the moment is obviously funding everywhere is kind of a difficult thing. And one of the problems I have is I'm trying to apply for funding myself, but I'm from Llandailo. I grew up in London, so I don't speak Welsh. Immediately when I apply for things, for funding, as a non-Welsh speaker, I'm almost rejected immediately because it's almost like a prerequisite now to get funding. Or like, you know, if you speak Welsh, you're up on the top of the list. I can't tell you the amount of schools and teachers who have come to me and said they have seen young people writing that they have never seen write. That they, like, I have encouraged them to write because thinking about the rules of English in a different way, thinking about the rules of communication and how we talk to each other. So obviously funding is a difficult thing for everybody at the moment. My main concern and question is for how does somebody who has, so I genuinely feel like I have an incredible, like so much to give. I've been doing this job now for 10 years. I was a youth worker for 10 years before that. I genuinely feel like I have so much that I could give, but having not got that skill and there not being programs for an adult to learn Welsh that's affordable, what are the things that can be done as a non-Welsh speaker to try to help people?
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. Was there one more question? Sophie, thank you.
Hello, my name's Kerry and I run a charity in Port called Bulldogs Boxing and Community Activities. We offer alternative education to young children, secondary age school children who are disengaging from mainstream education. And the work that we do, so we have a gym, boxing is our hook, so it's a sport aspect again. I just wanted to, again, say to Ali, like the work that we do in terms of supporting these young males and young people to access things that they wouldn't generally have to access is amazing. And the third sector picks up a lot of stuff that a local authority and public services can't deliver. That's really important. But also in the report it said about the exclusions for young males and the change in that. I think that's a really big highlight in how schools deal with behaviours of young males, and I think that needs to be looked at. So my question is, in terms of education, what can we do to support these young males to keep them in a system, whether that be an alternative education or in school? Yeah, and I also met this guy yesterday, Sheldon the rapper. He's amazing.
Okay, thank you, Kerry.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, we've got a couple of questions there. The first one was, what is the purpose? How do you teach purpose, value, and vision? I think that was Richard's question. Who would like to pick that one up? Ken, would you like to have a go at that? Think on it. I'll come to Ali. Yeah, Ali will have a go. Have a think.
Ken, do you want me to go?
No, you go first. Right.
So I'll go back to, I believe young people only know what they know and what's role modelled at home. And the first part of our employability programme is called Broadening Horizons. And we always have Magic Mondays, and starts with life coaching in the morning, which you'll be delighted to hear, which is transformational. over a journey as you build trust and understanding. And in the afternoon, we take our young people to do something they've never done before. And if I was to say that one of our young people in our last programme lived 2.1 miles away from Talaka Beach and had never seen it at the age of 23, that's when you start to broaden horizons. And then you start to talk about purpose. Why do you want to get up in the morning? Do you want to go back to the beach? It might sound really simple, but purpose starts with that head, heart and gut feeling. So broadening horizons, so showing young people that we can invest in them, showing them the things that we often take for granted when we were young people. I think that's absolutely crucial. So it's about role modelling, providing opportunities and just, opening up the world beyond just a young person's bedroom.
Thank you. Ken?
I think it's probably from an educational point of view that I've seen from my son and obviously got a couple of different experiences of this, but is what is success for young people and what is what is attainable for them and how is it measured? Now, to your point, Sheldon, some children struggle with reading and writing. Sorry. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to give it back to Ken.
Yeah, so I think we group young people, young boys, going, you have to achieve A in this or percentage in this or whatever it might be. And I think going down the individual route, what does success look like for them? An individual plan. I know that's very difficult, there's strain on the education system, but it's small little wins for them that builds confidence, that then gives them fires something within them to move forward and to do things differently. Probably got two examples of this. Well, my son came home from school and decided he wanted to enter the baking competition in the local Eisteddfod. That's fine. Came home, got second place. The first thing he's ever won. Oh, chuffed, brilliant. One opportunity. That's given him confidence in this week to continue doing something different or something he's passionate about. Going back to Mr. Elias at school, there was a young boy in the school, not very academic, was very disruptive right across his lessons. Mr. Elias spoke to him and was a bit like, what's the point doing year 9 French when he's never going to speak French? So they found what was best for that child, given his basic education he needed, English, maths, and whatnot. But then found what was he interested in, what was he passionate in, and it was bikes. And the school had just built a BMX track around the school, and they'd bought a load of bikes. So they sent him 1 day a week to the local bike shop as like an apprenticeship. So he learned, but his job in school, he had to look after the bikes then, so was given responsibility. That made him engage then in the lessons to give him the basic education he needed, and now he runs a small business in Carmarthen. And I think that's how we need to look differently at education and measure success. It's not so much how many GCSEs or A-levels you've got, but what skills are you learning to take forward into life. And I think, perhaps some educators won't see that as a positive, but I think every individual is different, and we need to treat people as individuals and what's best for them moving forward in their life to be successful parts of community.
Thank you. There were two other questions there from Kerry and from, who was the other person who asked? Sheldon. And it was, I'm going to summarise them in one and pass it to you, Sam. And it was, how do young people access the system better, and how do actually people like Sheldon access the system as well to help make this work? Sam, if you as representative of the system on this panel.
Yeah, thank you. The system that lots of people want to break down these days. The one thing just quickly struck me before I do answer that. I think when Richard asked about purpose, for me, I'm a Christian, so it's my faith that gives me that. I think you describe purpose, value, and vision. And there's historically, the institutions like the church, for the good that it did and not always the good that it did, but it provided some focus in terms of purpose, value and vision. As my faith as a Christian actually gives me much of that in my life. And it's really interesting. A report just come out recently called The Quiet Revival, which talks about the number of young men who are seeking faith at this time, who are turning to the church. So, and a very orthodox church like the Catholic Church has seen an explosion in young men. And there's a Latin service takes place in Cardiff, for example. We're seeing huge numbers of young men attending those services now as well. I thought it was an interesting observation that we talk about purpose, value and vision, and lots of young men now turning to faith as part of that. How do young people access these things? It's interesting, we haven't actually spoken, we've had two either current or former youth workers here. We haven't talked about the role of youth services as a panel actually, whereas when I was a kid it was a staple diet on a Friday night at the local youth club or wherever it was, and those services have been hollowed out of local authorities. There'll be a kids club on a Wednesday night and a youth club, and you make the promotion from kids into youth and you think you're all that. But those were great spaces for people to come together, and there was role models there to help guide those young people along their way. So there's probably an access point that has been removed. That's probably something that people like myself as politicians, but with the local governments and with charity groups, whether it's churches or whoever, you should think about how do we bring those spaces back, because they're really important. And I think the question Sheldon rightfully asking is around about the funding, and there are barriers there at the moment that people like you, Sheldon, are finding. We as politicians need to break those barriers down, so you've highlighted one this evening, so that's been really helpful to hear from you on that. But as you pointed out, Sheldon, councils in particular are really tied back in terms of funding at the moment because they're having to hit these statutory duties. But you're right to raise it, and all sorts of organisations knock on doors like mine, and it's good to hear your voice in that as well, so thank you.
I'm going to bring things to a close now. I'm going to come to Ed to have the final word as the troublemaker who wrote the report, to give us some summary and sense of the things that he's brought out of this. But my own just very quick observations on what we've heard this evening. Word of the evening, I think, has been belonging. So thanks, Sam, for raising that up. I think the kind of the true north, the compass of the evening goes to Ali and that word of hope. And it's about giving hope. But I think Ken asked the question of the evening when he said, what is success? And I think maybe there's something here for governments, for politicians to rethink as well, is what does success look like? And we have to question those ideas about what success is. The question about fame, is that what success is? Or is it actually growing up as a well-rounded, resilient human being, as Ken talked about? But I think the key word for me, the one thing that draws it all together, I would suggest, is the word people. And on this panel, we've been very lucky to have good examples of role models here in Ken, leaders in Ali making a difference in the community, and politicians like Sam taking an interest in this, willing to face difficult questions, and people like Ed who are willing to dig to find the really important data and present the awkward stuff to us. And I would turn that back to you as well and just say that's you too, because if there's one thing that's been very clear, it's the Mr. Eliases of this world who lead to careers like this, who achieve these great things. And there are Mr. Eliases out here in the audience this evening as well. So I think people for me is the one thing I draw together. Ed, hopefully I've bought you enough time to think of something really wise and breathtaking for us to finish with.
The thing I've written down, exactly like you, is Mr. Elias. And I think as we sort of go forward from this point in our work, the big question we've got, it's learning from actually something women have done brilliantly over the last 50 years, is just champion girls. And I think for guys, we've not done that very well. And the question is, how do we bring out the gold? Like, there's gold in every boy. Let's stop thinking of masculinity as toxic, and let's think about how we bring out the gold. From our point of view, stay tuned. We're going to be doing lots of reports over the next few months that ask exactly that question. We're going to be looking at mentoring. We'll be doing a lot of work on sport, youth clubs. We'll be looking at how you support parents in the early years, all those different things. But fundamentally, how can we put those people, those Mr. Eliases, those Alis, all these people in young men's life, bringing out the gold day by day? So stay tuned for that.
Fantastic. Diolch yn fawr iawn I chi gyd am eich amser. Thank you all very much for your time this evening. And yes, definitely a round of applause to the panel. Thank you. Is there a time that we need to be out of here? because I'm sure there'll be people who want to ask questions.
Time for a drink.
Time for a drink, certainly, and I'm sure Ken will be around for a selfie or a signature or something like that as well. Thank you again.
Thank you.